This is Solve It for Kids.
Hello, my amazing and curious friends. My name is Jennifer, the Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, and this is Solve It for Kids, the podcast that gives kids and families a peek inside the real world of scientists, engineers, and experts as they solve problems in their jobs using creativity, cooperation, and critical thinking. And now please welcome to the show my podcast partner, Galactic Space Geek, Jeff Gagne.
Hello, Jennifer, and hello, listeners. Oh yeah, I've read her book, I know all about her missions, I'm a huge fan, and she is finally on Solve It for Kids.
That's right. What problem are we solving today?
What is it like to blast off in a rocket ship?
Sequence start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's it like to blast off in a rocket? I think we have a pretty amazing guest for our listeners today, Jeff, don't we? Who is she?
I do agree. If you are not already a fan, after this episode you will be. Today we have the one and only Astronaut Nicole Stott, artist, author, aquanaut, and former NASA astronaut with more than 100 days in space.
Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thank you. I need you guys to introduce me all the time.
Welcome to King Supers. This is...
Yeah, you've done some amazing things. And, you know, we always like to start out, since we have some young listeners, when you were a kid, did you always want to go to space?
You know, I think I did, but I didn't think about it like it was something that was real, right? I mean, real, like that could be real for me, right?
Right.
I mean, I know, you guys probably can't believe that I'm old enough to have watched that first moon landing, but I did. And I have vivid memory, in front of the black and white TV with my family eating a grilled cheese sandwich or something, watching this go on. And I think even at 6 or 7, you realize that, holy moly, people walking on the moon is pretty extraordinary, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it was exciting for me and all of that. And I thought, man, that would be really cool. But it didn't seem like, here's what I'm super thankful for to my parents and so many others in my life, that nobody ever said, oh, Nikki, you can't do that. You can't fly in space. You can't be an astronaut. Nobody ever did that. I just kind of laid it on myself that, wow, that seems like something other special people get to do,
Right.
And even as I got older, I felt that way. And so very thankful for mentors in my life and people that encouraged me once I started questioning it. But man, I'll tell you, if I could go back in time, maybe I would have just been from day one, now that I know how awesome it is.
That is fantastic.
That's a great way to start. Is there one inflection point back in the day that you can remember that was sort of that, okay, that's it, I'm going for it?
So I studied aeronautical engineering in school because, when I was in high school, I didn't even really get ready to graduate. I really didn't even know if I was going to go to college. And I had no big plan, and I'm old. So back in that day, there wasn't this pressure like there is on kids now. Like the moment they enter college, they need to have a resume and know. And I don't know if I'd be sitting here with you if that had been what was required back then. But, I loved flying, wanting to know how things fly. So I studied aeronautical engineering, and I did that right up the road from the Kennedy Space Center. And I grew up in Florida where, things fly to space from.
Yes.
And, so I was excited about that in general. My uncle worked at the space agency over at Kennedy Space Center. And so I got a little insight to what was happening with the space shuttle program and that kind of thing. And while I was at college, I was like, oh my gosh, if you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? And then really seriously, why would you not? And the shuttle program was getting up and running. And then I'll stop rambling. But long story short, when I graduated from college, I was very fortunate to get a job at NASA at the Kennedy Space Center as an engineer on the space shuttle program. We were getting back to flight after Challenger, and all this whole big group of young engineers came in. And it was during that time, probably while working on the shuttle and station projects, and I got to see astronauts coming through,
Yep.
preparing for their flights.
Right.
And
Right.
I was helping make these vehicles, put them, get them ready for them to fly
That's
with this
incredible.
really awesome group of people. And I started thinking, seeing, I'm like, man, 99.9% of an astronaut's job, sadly to astronauts, is not flying in space. It's here on Earth,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And
Yes.
then it's so true, and then best I could tell, the majority of it was a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer. And
Oh,
so,
okay.
so I started thinking, well, maybe I could consider this. And that's when I reached out to a couple people that I considered to be mentors, people who taught me lessons like this one. I'll show you my little guy that I've had on my desk ever since this has happened. So my friend Jay Honeycutt, who taught all of us young engineers to approach every problem with, the idea, first of all, that there is a solution to the problem, but also with the here's how we can, not why we can't approach to things.
Oh, I like that.
And all of these things that just started getting embedded in me and seeing what astronauts do, I'm like, maybe I should talk to them and see if this is something I should pursue. And, they did exactly, I think, what my spirit needed, which was just to be somebody to say, okay, Nicole, if you want to do this, you got to pick up the pen and fill out the application.
Right.
Exactly.
It's like they gave me permission to do the one thing in the whole process that I had
That you had to
control
do.
of. Yeah, and it wasn't going to cost me anything. It wasn't going to hurt. I could still think that maybe they won't pick me and only other special people get to do this, but I at least was, putting
you were
myself
in the
out there.
mix.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
You
thankful
connected
for that.
so many different small dots, so many different small pieces of the puzzle from the aeronautical engineering because you liked the flying. And then your uncle gave you a little bit of a glimpse into what NASA happened, and you happened to go to college close. And there's a lot of little breadcrumbs along the way that led to this. That was cool.
Yeah. And I think that, I like that you mentioned that, that I liked flying. I think that's a big deal. And maybe it was better for me not to be in that position of, from the time I saw humans walking on the moon, that it was like life was going to be over unless I became an astronaut.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I've met people who are so wrapped up in becoming an astronaut that they aren't maybe appreciating the awesomeness of what they're experiencing along the way. And I can tell you, having been a person sitting on the other side of the table now, for the selection process, we are looking for people that are absolutely excited about the work they're doing, that are motivated to pursue what they're curious about, right? They want to learn more about it. They're looking at the awe and wonder in the world around them, and they're pulling that into their lives and the way they create things, the way they explore just through what they're studying at school or hobbies that they have, or ultimately the jobs that they do. And then all of that feeds such a cool way into making somebody that you'd want to pick to be an astronaut, that you'd want to spend an extended period of time on it in a relatively confined space with, beyond just what they studied. And, it's pretty cool to see how that whole process goes down. And I think it goes back to what you guys just said. It's about that curiosity. It's about that wonder and really exploring that in a way that's meaningful to you. And then that's how you end up giving back the most to the world around you too.
Exactly. And that makes a lot of sense. And that's what, I'm sure you say all this to the students that you talk to. I say that when I talk to them as well. Just be curious and notice the world around you, explore. That's what makes everything exciting. Then everything else that you learn, you get, really interested in, and it kind of just moves along. But I'm really curious. So after you went through this whole journey, what was it like the very first time when you blasted off into space? Were you excited, nervous?
No, I wasn't excited at all. Right? I don't think you can really explain the level of excitement that's going on inside you. I mean, it's like human beings. We have to respond to all this, right? You have to respond to everything. I mean, just the emotional side of it, the physical side of it, everything. And once you're strapped into that seat to launch, it's like it's all, finally coming together. These years of training, the support from your family and friends, all of it is kind of just churning there.
Wow.
But I think it's an excitement for good, right? It's like adrenaline for good,
I like that.
And I don't remember being afraid for me, because I think me and my crewmates, we had trained as much as you humanly possibly can to take care of whatever can humanly possibly be taken care of.
Right.
if something goes wrong too. But I'll tell you, the worry for me was thinking about my 7-year-old son and my mom and my husband and my sisters watching me do this, right?
Okay.
I'll tell you what, it is a lot more. And even for me, when I watch my friends, launching to space, I'm like, okay, they made it through that. They made it through that, because it's a lot of energy. It's a pretty complex thing to get people off the planet. And so it's a lot more difficult to watch somebody you love than to be the one strapping in. But man, you're strapped in. I felt anxious in such a really positive way. Like, I cannot wait to see what this feels like.
Wow.
I cannot wait to get to space. I cannot wait. All of these things that you're have been working up towards. And man, on the space shuttle, which is what I got to fly both times to space.
Right.
It's a big spaceship,
It
is a big spaceship, and you're at the tippy top of it, right? Like the people always are, the payload always is on any kind of rocket. And you're out there strapped in for a couple hours before launch, you get all comfy. I mean, I even remember napping for a little while just after you're kind of chill. Because, the crew didn't really actively get involved with the countdown until about 20 minutes before.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And then, man, it really isn't until that 10, 9, 8, that kind of iconic part of a countdown where you really start thinking, or at least for me, it's like, man, I might actually launch to space today. It's during that stage, holy moly, how lucky did I get? And then on the space shuttle, the space shuttle had the airplane looking part of it, the orbiter, right? That big white orbiter. And then there was a big orange tank, that's probably the most visible thing, and that just had liquid hydrogen and oxygen in it that fed the 3 little engines on the back of the orbiter. And then there were these 2 ginormous white crayon looking things that stuck to the side that were the solid rocket boosters.
Exactly.
And the way the space shuttle countdown worked was it was like that 10, 9, 8, 7 minutes, 6 seconds. All that fuel started flowing to those 3 little engines on the back of the orbiter, and they lit. And I always imagined that would be really violent, really loud.
I would think so, yeah.
But it wasn't. It was it's all liquid fuel that I guess just really kind of smoothly burns together and feeds those engines. So you felt a little bit of a rumble. But the cool thing about that was because the engines on the back of the orbiter were at an angle, as those engines lit, the whole stack, the whole space shuttle complement would tip 10 feet forward. And it was like this really technical term called the twang maneuver, where the whole thing moved. And so you felt it. You felt yourself kind of moving forward, and then you'd come back and perfectly timed when the countdown got to 0 and you were vertical again, that's when those ginormous solid rocket boosters lit.
Wow.
And that was when it was like, oh my gosh, was I ever on a launch pad? You get kicked from behind, it feels like 3 of you are starting to sit on top of yourself, and then you're shaking like,
oh, wow.
I mean, the in-cockpit video does not give you any indication, I don't think, of how jello shaking inside of your body you feel.
Wow.
And talking about the human reaction, it's like, I think humans have to react to this energy, this 7 million pounds of exploding energy under you. So the smile, I have to believe the smile, the tips of my smile were up near my forehead, right? It was so, I felt it so big, hurt on your face. And, you're high-fiving the person next to you, and there's woohoo, you don't want to be too unprofessional or anything. And I don't know. And then 2 minutes goes by, those boosters separate, big bang, big flash, and then there's no shaking anymore, but you're still really heavy. And then 6 minutes later, the external tank, that big orange tank, separates, big boom, big flash, and you are in space.
Whoa.
So from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour, orbiting our planet in 8.5 minutes, which is pretty impressive. And it's a little mind-boggling to think about it. It really is.
I mean, yeah.
Totally. You just explained from taking a nap, waiting for it to go, to being in space in less time than we have been chatting in this episode already, which it has that mind-blowing, what a great explanation. Thank you, Nicole. Question, since you did it more than once, Is there a specific moment in one of the two launches that you think back on and remember vividly?
It all kind of blurs together, actually. I think the memory, and it's from both of them, both launch experiences, is once you're there, like once you're there in space.
Yes.
And it just kind of is like, oh my gosh, I am here. Because the second time almost feels like the first time again. It's one of those really kind of overwhelming, lots of energy, dynamic things that almost feels like you've done it the first time again. And to be in that place that I dreamed of, at some point, really dreamed of being, to have gotten there safely, which made me, I remember reflecting on that as I was floating up out of my seat. I'm here, I'm safe, my family's good.
Yes.
With that, and then being blessed to float up and look out the window. I think that experience, I think it speaks to the human again in human spaceflight, being in this place that's extraordinary and getting to experience it in a way that's so different from anything else. And I think that's what, aside from all the energy and, just the wild ride of the launch, is that connection back to home. That's for me, that's what being an astronaut's all about. It's, I highly recommend all of it. The adventure side of it with launch and landing, and, I highly recommend that. But if it was just that, I don't know that I would have chosen to do it. The clincher for me was, and I think it's what that view out the window reminded me of, was like, man, everything we're doing there is ultimately about improving life on Earth. And that's a pretty cool mission to be a part of. That, I think, is a worthwhile mission, for the benefit of the listeners, for the benefit of my son, who I was, leaving at the launch pad and going off and doing this thing, to be doing something like that, to be a part of that, I think is worthwhile. And so all that launching and, stuff, just kind of goes along with it, which I'm thankful for.
That's great.
But I think it's more about this group of people coming together to do something really cool, like helping everybody on Earth is kind of a better purpose in it all.
Yes, I think that's great that you view it that way. And I think that's how most people should view it. Because going to space, as you said, is not just about the astronauts, right? It's about all of the tens of thousands of people that help get them there.
Yeah.
And then what you guys do in space, because I just did a book on space care about living in space and medicine and microgravity. It's with Mayo Clinic Press. And I kind of knew, but I had no idea how many medical experiments you guys do on yourselves.
Yeah.
While you're up there.
We are the experiment, Jennifer.
I was like, holy cow. And yet all of that information that you learn about humans living in space, you can bring back. And some of those, they're changing the way they're helping people on our planet. So I'm curious, can you tell us about any of the testing that you might have done while you were in space, either on yourself or other different things?
Actually, I could talk all day about this because I think there's, the space station's motto, which is so perfect, is off the Earth for the Earth. And I think it's just like, okay, absolutely. Okay. I don't care if it's the medical stuff you're doing up there or the way we've engineered the ginormous solar panels to collect, the energy to power everything, or the way we clean our air or create clean drinking water. All of it is being brought back to Earth in some way. It's helping us explore off the planet. But the main, really, if you look at it, and I think historically we'll see this, especially through the space station program, the main mission is bringing that knowledge back to Earth. And so while we're there, the science that's going on, I think it's so cool. It's like pretty much any area of science you can imagine has some experiments being performed in space. And as a crew member, it was so cool to be just part of it. Either, like you mentioned, we are the experiment. I think, pretty much any output product that I could provide, they wanted frozen and sent to the ground to study and see, how my body was changing and how they could, what kind of countermeasures, exercise, food, whatever it might be, to keep me healthy while I was in space. And then, man, the scientists on the ground love it for stuff on the ground, because essentially by being in that microgravity, that floaty environment that we're in up there, the effects that it has on our body it's like an accelerated aging process, right?
Yeah.
Our brain and our body figures out, we adapt very quickly to different and extreme environments. And
Right.
so that's a good thing because then we can function there and do what we need to do.
Yes,
But
that is a good thing.
it can also be a bad thing because, for instance, you're floating in space, you've got no load on your body, you don't
Right.
need to exert any force really at all to move and function there. And so our brains and our bodies figure out, hey, I don't need bones or muscles
Yes,
I'm
that's
going
the
to use off
problem.
on everything.
to survive in this environment, right? So they shut it down, man. They don't waste any energy
Right.
maintaining that anymore because they're like, oh, Nikki decided to go live in this floaty place. She doesn't need bones or muscles anymore. And so we have to do, 2 hours of exercise a day. We have supplements. But part of that is this accelerated osteoporosis and muscle, atrophy.
Yeah,
and that is a big problem down here on Earth. And if you can look at our bodies having that, going through that process in an accelerated way, faster than what you would experience here on Earth, man, the scientists just love it. And as much as we're trying to counteract it in space to stay healthy for when we come back to Earth, they can use all of those output products to look at how our body's changing and say, okay, in order for me to keep Nicole having healthy bones and muscles in space, we need to do these things. And that same exact thing can apply down here on Earth.
Yeah.
And there's so many things, fuels, the way fuels burn, the mixtures of fuels, how we make them pollute less and more efficient, protein crystal growth, to create new medicines and things. My friend, Serena Aunin, I don't know if you've ever met her, Serena Aunin Chancellor. She was a flight surgeon before becoming an astronaut. And I interviewed her for my book. And she talked to me about this just heightened awareness she had of how this environment affects things. Wow. Down to the, to the cellular and below level.
Oh, okay.
And she described how we draw our blood or we do things down here on Earth and we put them in a little petri dish and they become flat, right? Because gravity has an effect even on the cells when we take them out of our body.
Yes, that's true.
And she said she was doing things in space with, cells that she, collected from her own body and was using, and how cool it was that in that microgravity environment, they maintain their three-dimensional form.
Yes.
Right.
And so scientists can look and the way they grow and develop and how you can try to utilize different, medicines on it and treatments in a form that it's just like it is in your body. And that doesn't happen for us down on Earth. So they love that. And how, the care and feeding of those three-dimensional cells made her feel like she had all these other crewmates on board with her too.
I love that. Oh, I love that.
Really neat to think about. And then I just will throw out there, because at some point we should have a whole episode on these tissue chips, tissues on a chip. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, I've read about those. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Like these little, I almost think of them like circuit boards, like you think about in computers and stuff. And you see little squiggly lines on it and stuff. And you can have a little chip that is, lung cells or heart cells. And then you have it in the microgravity environment. And within this little chip, those cells are maintaining their three-dimensional form, their function like they would have in your body.
Yes.
And again, you can look at it in a way that allows you to say, okay, what kind of treatments can we develop? How is this cell changing? All of these things that I love because of what we can do just with that. But for me, I'm one of these people that I am so totally opposed to like animal testing and the very, insignificant amount of return we get from animal testing. And the fact that we can use our own cells, we can look at things in a more refined and meaningful way through something like this little thing called tissues on a chip. Oh my God, it's revolutionary to me.
Well, and you don't have to make the changes. It's human tissue that
it's human tissue. You don't have to relate it. Right.
Yes.
How is this mouse going to compare to what happens in a human or whatever creature they've decided to, use for the testing. But I mean, these little chips,
it's incredible.
It is. And then, growing organs in that three-dimensional environment of space.
Yes.
There's so much to look, that's going on right now that I don't think gets shared, really effectively to the general public. But what we have to look forward to is extraordinary. It really is.
I agree completely.
That's incredible. Nicole, you talk so much about the mission of Back to Earth, of everything that's been doing from the start of it to improve what is going on back here on Earth. Do you have any plans for, maybe Back to Earth, younger astronaut sort of book?
I would love to do that. And I have a couple other little stories in my head that I think would, apply to that age group and, to some younger readers.
Right.
And I love the idea of doing it. And for the reason you said, I think more and more kids are recognizing that they have a place, on the planet to help make things better, right? And so the sooner we can get them thinking that way, if they aren't already, and how they can use what they're curious about to make life better for everyone around them, the better. And, I think that's why even the adult version of this book, to me, it came from a very simple place, in my mind. It really was, we need people understanding how somehow we've managed with this really diverse international community to come together with the tens of thousands of people here on Earth to make this happen, but to build and operate peacefully and successfully with this greater good mission on a machine, on this machine in space that we've built to mimic, with all the science that we have, to mimic as best we can what Earth does for us naturally, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. That's a great
incredible, and how do we do that? What are the ways as this crew, and this team of people on the ground, have we done that? And just this beautiful parallel then that comes from it of, everything we've done on this machine so that humans can survive there. Because if you can't survive, you're not going to do any science there, right? So,
that's very true.
So you can compare. I think it's just this wonderful example of how this machine in space, everything about it is similar to this planetary spaceship that we live on.
Yes.
Right. And so every morning when we wake up on the space station, all 6 of us from all these different countries get together and we're like, okay, how much carbon dioxide's in my atmosphere? How much clean drinking water do I have? What's is the integrity of my thin metal hull? Am I still good, protected from this deadly vacuum of space? And oh, by the way, how are all of you feeling? Is everybody good? The health and well-being of your crewmates. That's before you ever go draw your blood or do a tissue chip thing or any science on board, because you have to know all of that stuff just to survive there. It's exactly the same here.
And it's a great way to start a day.
It totally is. It's, I need to understand all of the things about my planet that are allowing life to survive here. And how do I be part of it, part of maintaining that life support system? And I think from the youngest age, we can understand that and employ it in our lives. And so it's why I ask kids all the time, I'm like, hey, when you wake up in the morning, do what I do. When your feet hit the floor, remember that you are standing on a planet in space.
Yes. Exactly.
I knew that, but I had kind of forgotten about it, or it wasn't letting it be this active part or influence in my life. And now every day I wake up, my feet hit the floor. I'm like, holy moly, I am on a planet in space, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour,
Yes.
And how incredible that is, and what that means, and how I have a purpose on this place as well, to be part of, maintaining a life support system for all life on Earth. And it's pretty incredible. And kids get it. Kids get it.
They do. Kids are really smart, and they will get that. But it's also an important reminder for us adults too, to listen to what you say, because as we get a little older, sometimes we're like, oh, I'm getting up this morning. Really?
I think that's what happens. We lose some of the magic almost that allows us to appreciate that awe and wonder we've talked about, to look around us and just be in awe and apply that to our daily lives. And going to space, that's what it brought back to me, I think, was, wow, I am in a pretty special place and have a pretty special role as a part of it.
That's
great thing to remember.
That's amazing. And then the fact that you share that with everyone too, I think makes us kind of take a look at what you've done, and also maybe what some of us could do, as the commercial spacecraft open up, who knows? More people might be able to.
I'm so excited for that.
Step into
honestly.
space and feel those. I mean, that would be really exciting.
But I love the reminder that we're all already in space too. This idea of
Totally.
it's like you don't have to leave the planet to understand these, really like that. Oh my gosh, I live on a planet.
I think that's really, really amazing. Now I'm going to rethink when I step out of bed every morning. Right? I'm going to be like, I am on Earth. Yay.
Nicely
it's a great
done, Nicole.
planet. Yes.
Yeah. Good job, Jennifer.
So we could talk to you forever, and we might just have to have you come back.
Oh, we're doing that tissue sample thing, so we're
Yeah. But we are at the point in this episode where we ask our guests to give our listeners a challenge. I'm very curious now to find out what your challenge for our listeners is, Nicole.
Well, I think it follows along with what we were just talking about. I think it sums it up is that I would challenge everyone to accept their role as crewmates and not passengers here on Spaceship Earth. I think it's such, they seem like two simple words, crewmate, passenger. How different could that be?
Right.
But it is a hugely different role to play. And the thing about crewmate implies that you're taking it all, appreciating all that's going on around you, but you're going to take action as a result of it too. You're going to, bring it into your awareness in a way that makes you feel responsible for what's going on around you as well.
That's important.
And I really, really believe that by behaving like crewmates and not passengers, we have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space. And why would you not want to be a part of that?
That's wonderful.
That's very profound. Yes, I love that.
It's so simple, isn't it? I mean, it's so, I think it is kind of deep, but it's also like, oh my gosh, that is, if I just take this little shift in the way I behave, I'm going to be a crewmate, not a passenger. It's huge.
It's very huge. And again, this is something people of all age can understand.
Absolutely.
And go out and apply in their life, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. This has been such a wonderful episode. Thank you so much for being on Solve It for Kids, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
You are welcome. And I love Solve It. I love that that's the name of this. And believing there's a solution to every challenging problem. Very cool. Invite me back.
Absolutely. Anytime. All right. Thanks so much.
See ya.
Another guest that we could talk to for way longer than our episodes are. Astronaut Nicole is truly awesome. What an incredible perspective, and I love how she shares her experiences of what she did up there and how she brought it back down here.
Exactly. Yes. Definitely.
So her challenge is one that she uses a lot when she gets out there, but I'm a big fan of this challenge because Nicole treats it as not a one-time challenge. If you've heard Nicole speak before and given the challenge of take to heart your role as a crew member on Spaceship Earth and not just a passenger, you can wake up tomorrow morning and start all over again and really take that to heart. I wonder what that's gonna mean for you.
That's a really good question. And, I think it's one that kids of all ages should ask and think about, going forward, being a crewmate, not a passenger.
Yes.
So that means going out, it could be as simple as you see trash on the ground and you pick it up. It could be as simple as helping someone else out, all the way up to, doing whatever you're comfortable with. But I think it's a really, really exciting thing that she leads. And she also, if you haven't, by the way, checked out her art, you should check out Nicole's art too, which is really, really fun. So we would love to hear from you and find out maybe something you learned in today's show. Maybe you have met Nicole in person like Jeff and I both have, and you want to share a really cool, fun story about her. Be sure to tag us on our social media, which is Facebook, Instagram, and X. We are at KidsSolve. And we also have our website, solveitforkids.com, where we will have information about Nicole, and also we will have her book on there. So if you're looking for a way to find that would be amazing as well. But remember, be a crewmate,
not a passenger. And until next time, Jen and Jeff will be reading Nicole's book, rereading it, Back to Earth, and then you'll hear us next time on Solve It for Kids.